Welcome back to another Wednesday live training session where every Wednesday I go live talking about all things health, wealth, mindset, performance, relationships, because all of these things bleed into our life and they make us either a better man, leader, husband, father, brother, or you're going to be bleeding energy one way or the other. And so if I can help you in any of those areas, then I know you're going to go back into your community, you're going to serve more, you're going to be more. And that's the whole point. Today, I want to talk to you about the cost of divorce and the mental, the emotional, the financial, all the things that come into play. And this is right here. This is from Forbes 2024, talking about the latest trends, the latest data. Why are people getting divorced? Like, what do the numbers say? What do the stats say? What's the number one reason? What's the number one profession? What happens to our longevity with divorce? And what can we expect? Right? So we're going to go over all of that today. And I'm excited to get into it because I think there's a lot of unknowns and people have these ideas of what they think. And I think the more you understand it, the better you can be about proactively preventing it. So let's jump into things today. By the way, if you don't know me, my name is Joel Evan. I'm a best-selling author. I'm a coach. I work with men and help them build unshakable marriages and deeper connection with their kids. If you know my story, for 10 years, I lived an unconscious life, as I like to call it. I made a ton of mistakes. I was on the brink of divorce and I was able to turn it all around in just 3 months. Luckily, because my wife challenged me one more time, and one more time I listened, and one more time I sought advice, I sought help, I sought some of the best coaches in the world, and they helped me get to where I'm at today. And I realized we are in a crisis for men to step up and lead. And that is my whole message here to help you guys understand. And so hopefully with these trainings that I do weekly, we're going to enter this is going to be probably a 5 to 6 part series on divorce. And we're going to be talking about, first of all, how do we get here? And then we're going to start talking about like what to do to mitigate divorce, right? What are some things you can actually say that I've seen work with other men to actually stop divorce from at least get your woman to stop the process? Because I think a lot of men, they're living unconscious lives like me, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, I actually had this happen recently with a client. He makes $5 million a year and he owns his own construction business. And then out of nowhere, his wife said, "I don't love you. Like, I care for you. I just don't really love you." And he realized, like, how did this happen? He's like, "What are you talking about? Like, I'm crushing it in my business. I'm crushing it. We're going on vacations. We're doing date nights. We're doing all the things that I thought made me an elite man and husband. And I have zero connection with my kids. And my wife just said she doesn't love me. What am I doing wrong?" And I think that's where I kind of come in, and I've seen it happen. I mean, again, I live my own unconscious version of that. And I see a lot of men doing the same thing. I don't want them to make that mistakes, because what I've learned in my own journey is that fatherhood is a skill, and so is marriage. And when you understand the strategies and the skills and the frameworks that you can use on a regular basis and build that consistency, you can transform your marriage the same way I did mine. Actually, you can transform all your relationships. It's that important. And if you might be making $5 million a year and driving a Ferrari, but if you don't have your health, what good is it? If you don't have your relationships, your marriage, what good is it? One of the biggest regrets anybody ever says on their deathbed is, "I wish I had more experiences and I regret not connecting with certain people and either forgiving myself, saying I'm sorry to those that I hurt, or building those experiences." And guys, relationships are experiences. That's all there is to it. So anyways, look forward to this training. I'm very excited to get in it because we're going to talk again. Right now, this is the first training. We're going to get into like what you can expect in a divorce. And then the next couple of trainings are going to dive in how to prevent it from the strategic side. If you are going to get into divorce, I'm going to actually have a lawyer, and we're going to come on and talk about what are some strategies that you can use to mitigate some of the damages, the losses. How can you protect yourself if it's going to happen that way anyways? Okay. And then we're going to talk about like what to actually do during the court process. One of my clients is going through a messy divorce right now, and he's paid over $30,000 in lawyer fees. I just did a podcast with a divorce attorney, and she told me, "Joel, the average person probably spends about $100,000 on divorces." And I thought, no way. And she said, "Well, if they go to trial, which is in about 2 years, and everything that happens and leads up to that, yeah. So if it doesn't go to trial, then she said it's probably like 50 grand. So again, there's a lot of mistakes that are coming into play. And so if we can help mitigate some of those damages and allow you to, hold on to some of your wealth I think a lot of guys are going into these situations because they're so unknown. How often do you have to talk to lawyers and get into a divorce? And we don't do that often. We don't know. And so that's why I'm bringing on a lawyer to actually talk about these things so we can actually come in prepared. We actually know how to tackle these things so that we don't waste a ton of money with lawyers. What if we only had to waste like $5,000? Well, that's a lot better than $30,000 like one of my clients or some of the other clients that this divorce attorney is seeing where they're spending up to $100,000. But that's of course only if it goes to trial. A lot of these don't go to trial. But even if she said if they don't, you're looking at $50K anyways, because these do kind of malinger. So that's going to be the whole point of this next series. So look forward to that if you're going through one of these situations. And then in the very end, we're going to talk about how to act, how to consciously uncouple. When you separate, is there a way that, it's a messy situation, but can we do it in a conscious way? And that's the whole point. That's what I'm all about. So here you guys go. The stats don't look good. It's funny. This article says I took the main highlights of the Forbes 2024 article on divorce statistics. You can go out and check it. I took the most important ones that I felt would be most beneficial for all of you so we could summarize it in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Now, 43% of marriages are dissolving. That's almost 50%. If you go to a second or third marriage, getting way higher. 60 to 73% of second and third marriages are ending in divorce. Ding, ding, guys. This should be a red flag. This should be a huge alarm for you because the fact of the matter is, and I see this all the time, clients think the reason when they divorce their spouse, they're going to go out and meet the next woman of their dreams. They just haven't found their soulmate yet. That's why they're getting a divorce. Guys, the stats don't show that because you're meeting your second and third marriages and you're still getting divorced. It's even higher. It's even worse. The problem is you. The problem is you haven't learned the strategies, the skills that I'm telling you that are required for fathers and in relationships. And if you actually knew these, you wouldn't go to your second or third one, and probably you wouldn't even have the first one happen and end in divorce. That's the big problem. Guys are going and jumping from marriage to marriage, and women are too, thinking that they just need to meet the right person. It's the soulmate solution. And that is so far the farthest thing from the truth. I thought the same thing with my wife. I thought, hey, if we break up, it's just probably because I didn't meet my soulmate. And that is, I can tell you, I'm so happy that I'm with her, and it had nothing to do with soulmate stuff. Okay. I think there is a uniqueness that attracts all of us, and there's some magnetism there, but you can find that, I think, with anybody. It's having the right skills, guys, and that right connection. And if you don't build that connection, well, then it doesn't matter who, you can see the stats show, it doesn't matter who you get with, right? When do couples divorce? Typically after 8 years. So if you get over the 8-year mark, give yourself a big congratulations. I think a lot of people stay in these relationships a lot longer, regardless, just because they're hoping things will change, right? And they usually don't, unless you change. They take over a year to finalize. We were talking about that earlier. So be aware of that. That's going to tie up a lot of your money and legal fees. On average in the nation, couples are spending about $7,000 to dissolve their union. Okay. Here's an interesting stat too, talking about if you are a divorcee, you're more likely to die. You have a higher rate of mortality. So sadly, it says the mortality rate is 1,363 per 100,000 divorcees, compared with the 779 per 100,000 for married couples. I found another study, a meta-analysis out of the Journal of Health and Social Behavior. It found that divorced adults had a 23% higher risk of death compared to married adults. And then another study showed that divorced men have mortality rates that are 250% higher than those of married men. I'm not surprised. And the reason I'm not surprised is this. Number one, as a holistic health person, I've done a lot of research in this, and we look at the blue zones. It's a famous book. There's some controversy of whether it's true or not, but this scientist, this author, he identified 5 big regions in the world that have the largest amount of centenarians. And he figured out what makes them all unique, because they're all so similar but also very different, right? You've got people in Greece, you've got people in Costa Rica, in the Nicoya Peninsula, you've got people in Loma Linda, California, you've got people in Okinawa, Japan, and you've got people somewhere else that I'm blanking on this one. It'll come to me. This is what happens when you go live. But the point being is there's 5 major blue zones that people are living into their 100. Oh, the other one is Sardinia. It's Italy. It's Sardinia. So people are living into the hundreds. Why? Well, one of the big factors is community. We see that over and over again. People that are in close-knit communities live longer and longer. guys, when I see even the disease with dementia, Alzheimer's, a lot of these, we see a lack of community. And so it just makes sense that men are dying at a higher rate without that community, without that person to love and be and stabilize with, really, right? So there's no shocker there. We also see just such a epidemic of loneliness more than ever. We saw that with the pandemic. Loneliness, they say, is equating to, I forget the numbers. It's like 7 packs of cigarettes is worse for someone's health than loneliness. Depression, isolation. When men go through this, so I just know from the guys that I coach, they're devastated. It takes a lot of time for most of them to just get back on their feet. And a lot of them, instead of looking for help, looking for a tribe, they do the opposite. They isolate, and that forms anxiety, depression, and PTSD, all types of trauma, right? So, and that can lead to fatality if you're not staying on board with it, right? So no shocker there. The other interesting thing, I think, is looking at friends, looking at our inner circle. If your friends are divorcing, you're more likely to divorce. And I always talk about Jim Rohn. You are the person of the 5 closest friends you have. That's a famous Jim Rohn quote. A lot of you know it. And it makes sense. You look around your paradigm. What is your reality? What is your paradigm? If others in your world are getting divorced, it just becomes normalized. It's like, well, look at Joel just gave the numbers. It's normal. You know, you could just start spouting out figures. Don't worry, Karen. Like 40% of the first-time divorces, this is normal. This is what happens. No, guys, it's not normal. That's the paradigm. That's the standard you should keep yourself to. This is not normal. How do we fix this, right? But when it becomes normalized because all your group of friends are doing the same thing, then it's just a lot easier to do. And it's a lot easier than to have to work out when it's normal, right? Be, like David Goggins says, be uncommon amongst uncommon men, right? Let's look at the most common reasons for divorce. The number one reason, according to Forbes 2024, is a lack of commitment. That is the number one reason why most spouses, why they divorce. In fact, they said 75%. That's the reason. And the second big one, which was 60%, is infidelity. So the second biggest reason why couples divorce is infidelity. And the number 3 big reason was domestic abuse at 24%. Now, I'm going to make an argument here about this whole lack of commitment thing. And you're going to see why as we kind of cruise down through this article. Okay? Now, one of the big things they also made an argument is that the reason why couples divorce is that there's a basic incompatibility or money issue, okay? Money issues will come up. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but 58% of couples report arguing and excess conflict. Really? You don't say. Here's the thing. Because more than 50% of people are arguing, always seeing conflict, do you think that then cycles up to this idea of lack of commitment? Lack of commitment, to me, is almost like a very logical thing that someone had to think about to then say, well, I don't know, why do we divorce? It was just we both weren't committed. We just both weren't committed to staying together. Well, duh, like of course you weren't. Like that's why you both decided to separate. But what led up to the lack of commitment? Because you sure as hell were committed when you said I do. You sure as hell were committed in the early runs. You sure as hell were committed when you decided to have multiple kids. Like you weren't committed. You were not committed then. So where did this lack of commitment come? I think it all stems back and it trickles down to the root cause of this incompatibility issue. Constant stress, pressure, lack of communication, arguing, conflict, like they said. That then bubbles up to this logical idea of, well, I'm just not committed. That's just an easier cop-out. But the hard part is, why do we argue? Why do we have so much conflict? What are the deep-rooted issues there? Can we fix that? Because if you can fix that, you don't have a lack of commitment issue. And so I think it's a little misnomer to say 75% of people, they decided to quit because of not being committed, right? One of the number one things they call the last straw. So a lot of couples, again, 69% reported that they divorced because their couple there was infidelity involved. Well, again, all this excess conflict leads to looking for, instead of you feeling like it's helpless, you feel like you can't work things out. Well, that leads then, instead of working on the inner self, the truth, that's the truth. You have to work on you, both of you do. And instead of doing that, it's just so much easier to look for external reasons to validate ourselves, to make ourselves feel good. So we look to outer resources. And that is going to lead to other women, other men. And that is where infidelity comes up. So of course it's the final straw. I'm not surprised by this stat, 69% divorce because the final thing that happened was an infidelity act. Naturally, it actually just makes sense. Like if you're not getting your needs met and someone else is meeting them, well, then you're going to go hang out with that person a lot more. Because when you're around your wife, you're around your husband, all you get is arguing and bickering. Why would you stick around that longer, right? So 66% of men, 74% of women think their partners should have worked harder to save the marriage. Again, no surprise there. Everyone is at the end of the line. They are both just burnt out. They're like, I've done it all. Guys, I was there. My wife gave me a challenge and said, you need to fix this marriage. You're the problem. And I was so upset because I'm like, I'm not the problem. I've done so much. I'm a best-selling author. I'm a life coach. I'm a health coach. I've done all these certifications. I've read all the books. I've gone to all the seminars. I think at this point, you're the problem. Like you haven't worked. You go do something. And I'm really glad that I listened and did one more because there was part of me that didn't want to do that. I think most guys are that way. They don't like, what more could I possibly do? I do everything. Like, what more could I possibly do? That's where I was at. And so if I were to have divorced, I would have said, my wife, I would have said the same story that all these stats are saying. I would have said she could have worked harder on herself. She didn't work hard. And that's why we're here we're at. She kept challenging me, but never worked on her. And guys, that's actually kind of true. But I kept working on me. And when I kept working on me, it finally clicked. Something finally clicked. Oh, Joel, you're not being a leader. You're not stepping up. You've taken a back seat to leadership. You've been apathetic. You've been working so much on work and your success. You let the kids, it's sloppy seconds. No one's getting your love. And I didn't have that aha even after all the trainings I've done, believe it or not. And I think most of us are that way. They haven't even done any trainings and they still don't see that blind spot, right? And so, of course, you're going to reach that. But I don't think that's the real reason. That's not the root cause. Everyone's saying that. I'm not surprised by that. But that's not why the root cause of why divorce is happening. Over 70% of couples report not understanding the realities or the stages of marriage. Well, that's for sure. Because what I didn't put in this article, and you can go back and read it, marriages are still going up. People are still getting married, even though they know good chance you're not going to stay married. So 72%, they didn't actually even understand the commitment that it requires. And that is so true. You don't realize all the things you're going to suffer through. And that, guys, is what makes you stronger and better. That's what gives you the wisdom. That's what makes you so attracted to your wife more than anybody else, because you've gone through it. Unlike anyone else could actually go through those things with you. It's pretty amazing. And that is life. Us getting our teeth kicked in, us getting knocked down and learning and doing it again and again and again and getting better, gaining wisdom so that we can be better. That's how we get better. I don't understand half the realities that are involved to life. I don't know what will come next. I don't know all the steps to make a business, but that's the exciting part, right? I don't know some of the next steps, but I know I'm going to get better. I'm going to get stronger because I have that attitude. And that is how you get better, through failure. So nobody understands the failures. The realities. If you are a gaming manager or bartender, you better watch out. Your divorce rate is the highest of all professions. I didn't put this in here, but one of the higher professions, and I know this as a first responder, there was like 50% in the securities, I believe they referred to them as security profession, is a higher marker also for divorce. So watch out if you're in that profession. Divorce rates by income. Interestingly, they found that, hey, when people make more money at a certain amount, 200,000 specifically, the divorce rates remain steady. Below that, you might be experiencing more divorce. Now, when it went up to a point of 600,000, it dropped 5% to 25%. Once it exceeded $600,000 of income, divorce rates climbed up again. I don't know if there's any causation correlation there. It's such an interesting fact. I think a certain amount of money says a couple of things about people. They have to have a certain mindset. They have to have a certain intelligence to have gotten there. And so usually they can rely on some of that intelligence to look for better solutions and hire people that can help them. So that's one. I think sometimes higher money could also mean that you're not paying attention to certain things. So yeah, you make a lot of money, but that doesn't mean you're paying attention to your family, your kids. And so maybe that's what's happening here. I don't really know. But we do know that when poverty is below the line, you see an increase in divorces, which again, lack of resources, lack of people to work with, coaches, consultants, things like that. And so again, these people, they just probably they don't have the resources to get the help that they actually need. college educated women and men, actually, I just didn't put the men stat, but college educated women are most likely to have a lasting marriage. So again, no surprise there. I think in general, the more educated you are, the better you can make better logical decisions. You can make more cogent decisions in times of stress than just relying on your limbic, emotional, amygdala, fight or flight brain. The brain that is like that reptilian brain, that very primordial brain, the primitive brain, right? So people that are more educated, I could see there being I don't think degrees matter, but I could see there being a level of education that helps them utilize this guy, the prefrontal cortex, a little bit more than maybe a less educated person. Okay, so that is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stats there. Look forward to next week where we talk about how you can actually mitigate some of the stuff that get in the way with divorce, as well as look for things you can actually say, do, and actually hope to stop the divorce from happening in the first place. Some of the key things you're needing to say to your women to help you so that you can stop that divorce process. And then also we'll talk with lawyers and we'll start to learn like what are the things that we can do to protect us pre-divorce if that decides to happen. I'll catch you guys next week. If you're interested in learning about some of my coaching, my one-on-one coaching, my group coaching, being part of any of the communities, I do a lot of relationship coaching. My wife, Nini, also works with the women. We do couples coaching. It's an amazing experience. If you want to learn more about some of these things, or you want to just go out and download the app is in stores, Limitless Fathers, the app. It is free. There's a lot of free stuff there. There's a paid version as well. So if you want to get access to some of the things that I'm talking about here and some of these trainings, then go out and check out the app that just dropped as well. Otherwise, drop me a line or a comment on this video or shoot me a direct message and I'll get back to you and I'll get you the details on any of the programs if we see there's a fit and I can actually help you guys. Having a blessed week. I'll see you guys next week.